Tell us what's next.
We usually start 7:30, and so it's live now. So I figured we could do kind of like a Q&A together, but I'm also open to whatever you guys want to do. But just opening the space for people to ask questions. I usually speak or read, and there are devotees that are watching from different parts of the world. So it's also their opportunity to have some association and to connect with the devotees in the temple room. So yeah, I thought maybe a Q&A would be a good way to kind of hold space together since we have Vishakha here. Does anybody, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I love Q&A.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Question. And speak up loudly too so they can hear you.
Can you talk a little bit about the stone people on the altar? I don't know what else to call them. I don't know their names. I know they're people and they're stones, and I'm really attracted to them.
Really quick, I just want to do a little intro here for them too, just in
yeah.
case. Dandavat Pranams, everybody who's watching. We are live here at the Soquel Seva Ashram, and tonight, Monday night, is usually our class time, but because we have all these wonderful devotees and guests in the room, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please post them in the comments section of this live, and we'll go ahead and share them with Vishakha. And so for now, we're opening up the question space for the devotees who are here, and Kunti just asked a question about clearly. Kunti's asking.
I'm not sure. You're asking about the deities?
No, the Govardhan.
The Govardhan Shila. Okay.
Okay. So Kunti is asking a question about the deities and the Govardhan Shilas on the altar. So I'm going to bring the camera close so you can hear the response, and I'll be watching for your questions.
Yeah, at first I thought you meant Govardhan Shila. Then I thought, but you said people, so maybe you meant the deities. I just wasn't sure.
So yeah, why would that be different? Aren't they both different people? For me, it's like
you were talking about the
people,
Shilas.
divine people.
You're talking about the Shilas.
Okay, so there's a few questions there. If you see.
Okay. Kunti kills me.
You can skip it.
I can't keep a straight face around. Okay, so what is it? Vaidehi, can you tell me what the question? I'm sorry.
What's up with the Govardhan?
Would you mind?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just the significance.
So
the Shilas.
the significance of the Shilas.
The significance and just the ontology, like what is that? What is there?
Alright.
What are they?
Okay. All right. So we have on our altar here, you will see their lordship, Shishibu, Garanga, Gandharvika Giridhari. And we also have, how many Shilas do you have?
4.
You have 4, wow. So we have these 4 mysterious stones on the altar. And one might ask, what are they doing there? We are here to answer your question.
Where are the stones?
Go up there and go sit on 4.
Behind Tulasi. Okay, I'll see later.
So these are very. So first of all, we'll mention that within the Vedic culture, there are 2 types of stones which are traditionally worshipped. More traditional in the Vedic culture is the worship of what is called Shalagram Shila. Shila means like a stone. And Shalagram refers to these special stones which appear in a river in the Himalayas. The river is the Gandaki River, I think. Is that right? I think the Gandaki River. And these stones, they have very special markings. That's how you can identify them. And they are said to be forms of Lord Vishnu. I don't know how much back. Everyone here has some familiarity, so we don't need to give too much. Like, who's Vishnu? And
No.
well, maybe for Jonah. You heard of Vishnu?
Heard of
Okay, so everyone here knows. Okay, good. So everyone here knows. So Lord Narayan or Lord Vishnu. He's the 4-armed form. So that's known as the Shalagram Shila, and that worship is more prevalent within Vedic India. And most traditionally, they are worshipped by Brahmins, who are the top of the caste system in India. And then the other type of Shila, the other type of stone that you'll find worshipped in India, actually there's also Shiva Linga, it's another one. But that's another discussion. Let's keep that for another discussion. So then let's say within the category of Bhagavan, you know what I mean by Bhagavan, right? The personality of Godhead. so in the category of Vishnu, Krishna. Then there's the Shalagram representing Vishnu, and there's the Govardhan Shila, which is representing Krishna. And these stones, they come from a hill in Vrindavan. And the mood of worship is very different. So the worship of Lord Vishnu is very much in the line of what is called Vidimarg. Means very, very much based on scriptural rules and regulations. And we don't, within our group, let's say we're a little shy to worship Shalagram Shila. We don't keep on our altars generally. I mean, like Siddhantically or ontologically speaking, because we are not primarily worshippers of Vishnu. We recognize Krishna as the origin of Vishnu. We recognize Krishna as, and on one level they are non-different. But at the same time, if we're going to be very precise, Krishna is the origin of Vishnu. So we recognize Krishna, Anadir, Adir, Govinda. He is the most original expression of divinity. So we worship Krishna as supreme. And so therefore our tendency is to worship the Govardhan Shila, which is representing Krishna. And so the Vishnu Shila we don't worship, partly because Vishnu is not our primary deity, but also because we're not actually qualified. It's very difficult. It's very strict worship. Whereas Govardhan Shila is representing Krishna, who is our worshipable deity. And also the Govardhan Shila in particular, the mood of Govardhan is very, very merciful. The worship of Govardhan Shila is the most simple. More so than this deity form of Krishna. With these deity forms, there are, we follow a lot of scriptural regulations, in their worship. The Govardhan Shila, because Govardhan is a very particular mood. Krishna is representing Krishna in a very particular mood. And it is a very magnanimous mood, very generous, very loving mood. So our Gurudev was very relaxed in how devotees would worship the Govardhan Shila in their homes. Like he told one devotee, asked our Gurudev once, how do I take care of him? And you can give some biscuit and chocolate every day. Or he told another devotee, when you cook something, put it in front of Giriraj. Giriraj is his name, the way he would call him. And put the food in front of him and say, oh, Giriraj, you eat. Like that. Very, very simple. Whereas normally with deity worship, there's Dinabandhu will tell you, Chinmoy, Vaidehi, they'll tell you, they start at 4 a.m. and so many mantras and so many offerings and so much involved. It's very elaborate. So the worship of Govardhan Shila, these stones, is very special. And so these stones, as I said, they come from this hill in Vrindavan, in Govardhan, and they're considered to be, as Srila Sridhar said, a part of the infinite is also infinite. So one stone from that hill is considered non-different from the whole hill, which is an expression of Krishna himself. It is Krishna in this form of a hill, a mountain. Should we tell the history of Govardhan? Yes. Yeah. You must know, right? So it's nice to hear.
But can I ask real quick one question before I forget? So these divine Shilas is more darker, almost black color and very smooth. Can it also be from Govardhan, or is that a different type of Shila?
I'm not an expert in all of that. I mean, that's a whole world.
Right, Shilas.
You have to identify, because sometimes people, they'll find what they think is a Shila, but they're not 100% sure, and they'll go to an expert to analyze. I'm not someone who could say that. There's something very particular, there's special markings, so I can't say.
So now I'm thinking of in Nrsimhapali, there's a Shila that's Nrsimhadev, right? If I remember
That's
correctly,
right.
the deity.
That's right. Yeah.
So the also manifest, any aspect of the Lord can also manifest itself in Shila form, right? Is that correct? Or I don't know.
You know, Kunti, I'm not an expert in all of this. I'm wondering now, that could be considered a kind of Shalagram Shila, because Nrsingadev is Vishnu avatar. Because all of these because Vishnu has different forms, different avatars, and every Shalagram, it can be identified by the markings as a very particular Vishnu avatar. So like, for example, in our Navadvip temple, the Vishnu form is, anyone remember? Korma. Is it Korma? No. Is it Korma Dev? I think it's Korma Dev. Varaha Dev. Thank
Sweet
you.
rice.
Yeah, Varaha Dev. So the Shila in our Navadvip temple was identified to be by the markings. There's one scripture which describes the markings for each type of Vishnu avatar that will appear. And so that one was identified as, it's the Korma Purana. That's why I'm getting mixed up. It's described in the Korma Purana. So ours was identified to be Varaha Dev. So actually that's an interesting point. I never thought about that. Maybe that Shila in the Shingapali is a Shalagram Shila. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. We have to ask somebody.
And like with Krishna, a lot of things it can be both, right? Different and non-different, like Vishnu and Nrsinga.
Well, Nrsinga is an avatar of Vishnu.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's Vishnu Tattva. So we wanted to, Sulita wanted to hear the Govardhan Leela. Okay. So it's a very sweet Leela. So Krishna's pastimes we can add. They're actually eternal, and they move in a cyclic way through the material universes. But if we're speaking like in historical terms, we'll say about 5,000 years ago. And so Krishna, he appears in this charming village of Vrindavan as a cowherd boy. And he appears within the Vaishya caste. I don't know if you're familiar with the caste system of India. Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. And so Krishna, he chooses to appear in one of the lower castes, actually, which makes things just more simple, you know, and more kind of conducive to exchanges of love. Because when there's too much opulence and grandeur and wealth, it can be a real distraction from just simple heart-to-heart dealings. So Krishna chooses to appear in this like very simple, unassuming form of a young cowherd boy in a village, you know, in India. And so there's this, and so I mean, one thing which is very beautiful about the whole Vedic way of life, which I can add is, you know, kind of different from Krishna consciousness, but we're following, just to make things more complicated. So one way our Gurudev presented it is, you find in the Vedas 2 lines of development. There's a line of evolution, and then there's a line of revolution. So sometimes you'll find like one particular system of development advocated, and then at the end of it, Krishna says, or it's stated, you know, forget all of that. Just do this, you know. So you'll see that in Bhagavad Gita. So anyway, where was I going with that? Govardhan Shila, Govardhan Leela.
To complicate things further, you're adding another kind of thing.
Okay, well that was in parentheses.
Oh. So you're also, yes, I know you're reading.
The story.
The story, yeah, exactly. So Krishna, so one thing which is very beautiful about the whole Vedic way of life is that it's designed to be the most harmonious way to live in harmony with the environment. Actually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our grandfather guru, he described this as the essence of the Varnashram system. Varnashram is the name of the social religious caste system of India. So way Srila Maharaj like boiled it down to this point: harmonious dealings with nature. It's a way of living in harmony with our own like material nature, the nature of the environment we're in, and simultaneously moving towards a higher spiritual goal. You know, because we can't reject our material situation at present. We can't deny the fact that we are embodied beings and we have material desires. We can theoretically understand like, oh, this is not real, but we can't pretend that we've actually realized that. So the Varnashram system is a way of like living in harmony with our material nature, the material environment, the system of the environment, the way nature is working, and simultaneously moving towards something higher. So within the Vedic way of life, there's this deep recognition, and it's interesting actually nowadays, like in like this modern age, there's this like awareness that's coming out more and more. You know, so like what are like the you know, this like consciousness is being encouraged by more enlightened persons nowadays. Like, you know, think about like, you know, I mean, just for as an obvious example, the problem with you know, the environmental crisis right now, right? You know, there was the whole industrial revolution. There's this whole age of technology that's developing, and now we're seeing the consequences of that, right? This life of convenience and technology, like, what are the consequences of that? So there's this awareness that's kind of becoming more prevalent in the world today. So the whole Vedic way of life, it's very much about like living in awareness of what are the natural systems in the environment, and how do we live in sync with that, minimizing our disturbance, and like honoring and respecting where everything comes from, and honoring all the natural cycles, all the natural forces. So as a part of that, it's recognized that there are different deities who are, when I say deity, you understand what I mean? Yeah. There are different deities who are responsible for the natural elements and forces in the environment. So these Vaishyas, their main occupation is with dairy farming. They're dairy farmers. Vaishyas, they tend to like be businessmen or farmers, agriculture, dairy, like these kinds of like simple occupations. So in the case of Krishna, he appears in a village of dairy farmers. And so their main business is with the cow. And so the cows are dependent on grass. Grass is dependent on water. And so the members of the village where Krishna lives, Vrindavan, they give special attention to the worship of the god who is responsible for rain, Indra. So every year they would hold this grand annual worship and offerings to this god Indra, so that to like please him, so he'll supply the sufficient rainfall, which will nourish the grass, which will feed the cows, who provide the milk, which sustain their livelihood, you know, provide their livelihood. So it's very beautiful. It's this beautiful way of living in harmony with the environment. So every year they like prepare this special offering and worship for Indra, very grand level of worship, and then Krishna's maybe like, I don't know, 10 or something like that, little boy, and he puts a spanner in the works, and he tells them like, who cares about this Indra? like actually everything in this world is running according to karma. So, you know, if you put out something good will come back automatically. Indra doesn't really have anything to do with this, you know. So actually everything we need, it comes from this hill, this hill called Govardhan. You know, because this hill Govardhan gives us like sweet waters and grasses and trees with their fruits, and everything we need for the cow, it comes from this hill. let's just worship this hill instead, you know. And Krishna, he's kind of a mysterious boy. He's like very, very beautiful, very charming, and there have been all of these very mystical events surrounding him where he showed this superhuman strength. And do you want a cushion, Sarva? You okay?
Yeah, okay.
So you know, they're all kind of, well, maybe we should listen to him, you know. Some of them are a little unsure, but most of them, they decide, okay, we're going to do this, you know, we'll just do what he says. And his father is Nanda, who is like kind of the head of this village. So he decides, okay, we'll go with what he says, and then everyone just goes along with it. So they it's very sweet pastime, isn't it? So they prepare all of these like wonderful food, mountains of food offerings, and they present to this hill. And then Krishna, he takes on the form of this hill. He expands into the form of this hill. And he has these arms which are extending out and eating all these offerings. And this goes on for some time. And his hunger isn't satisfied. He's like asking for more, and they keep bringing more from nearby villages. And then meanwhile, this god, Indra, he becomes a little angry. Like, hang on, that was all supposed to be for me. And now these village men, they're being bewildered by this foolish boy. Like, who is he? They're listening to him, and they're ignoring my worship. You know, now they're going to have to pay for this. You know? So then he calls for all of his like henchmen, and because he's in charge of like all of these subtle elements, and in particular like the rainfall, and so he's calling for like storm clouds and lightning and hail, and he orders them all to go and devastate this village, you know, like, you know, as his retaliation, because his ego's been bruised. So he sends them all, and they all go, and they start like, you know, destroying, raining and storming and hailing on this village. And when this starts, then all of the villagers, they come to Krishna, and they say, and they don't understand that Krishna had taken on the form of Govardhan. You know, they go to the boy Krishna, and you told us to do what you said, and now look, we're in trouble. You know, like, please help us. So Krishna says, you know, don't worry, I got you covered. And so Krishna goes there, and with the pinky of his left hand, he picks up this massive hill. It's like a few miles long. Maybe someone can say exactly how long. A few miles long. He picks up the hill with the pinky of his left hand, and then this goes on for 7 days. For 7 days and 7 nights, this storm is raging, and there's very sweet descriptions of how, like, all the villagers, they come and they huddle under this hill, and because they have this very simple mood of devotion, they don't know who Krishna is. They don't know that he's God. And so even though he's like displaying the superhuman strength, like they think of him like he's our boy, you know. So like there's descriptions of how like some of the men and women, they're feeding him butter, like to keep him nourished and strong, and they're massaging his arms and encouraging him, and some of them are holding up sticks, like, oh, we're also supporting the hill, like we're doing our part. You couldn't have done this, couldn't do this without us, you know. And then finally, you know, Indra, he realized after 7 days had gone by, he realized his mistake, and he came and he understood this isn't an ordinary boy, this is actually the Supreme Godhead himself, appearing in this like hidden way. And he came and he offered so many prayers and his apologies, like that. But this whole we call it Leela. Leela means like a divine play of the Lord. it represents this like very sweet and loving and magnanimous and also protective mood of the Lord. So that whole mood, it is that's connected with this Govardhan Shila. And so these stones, and so that hill is still standing today, and these stones, they are worshipped by the devotees of Krishna. Yeah.
So is Krishna like the kind of like the source of all deities? Like
that's our understanding based upon the scriptures. Yes.
Most powerful.
Yes, most original, most powerful. What's the first Brahma Samhita verse? Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. This is from one scripture. Ishvara means like a lord, a master, a controller. So Ishvara Parama, he is the supreme. Amongst all Ishvaras, amongst all gods and masters, controllers, he is the supreme, he is the topmost. Satchidananda Vigraha means he has a fully spiritual form that is composed of full consciousness, eternity, and bliss, joy, ananda. Anadir Adir means he has no origin. He is the origin of all. And sarva karana karanam, he is the cause of all causes. So this is one verse. There are many verses that are pointing to this in the scriptures.
So this is like obviously a very beginner question, but so
no problem.
The feminine deity next to Krishna. So
that's Radharani.
Radha.
Yeah, and that's also you were discussing this point about how what we find presented in the Vedas is the most developed understanding of divinity, and so this is like another evidence of that, or point there to be considered, that primarily in religious traditions it's only the male aspect which is known and described, but here the feminine aspect is also given great importance, and and much information is given also. So yes, as there is a male aspect or divine masculine principle, so there is the female aspect of that too. So that is represented by Radharani, Radha. Yes.
And they're really kind of like one thing.
Well, it is described. What is that? How does that verse go? Shri Radha, no. Radha Krishna Pranay Vikritir Hladini Shakti Rasmad Ekatmanava Pi Puvi Pura Deha Badam Gatoto Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Vadunata. This is one verse describing how they, for their, you seem like you were familiar with the word lila. When I said lila and I explained it as divine play, you seem to click.
Well, I understand what you mean.
Okay. So like in that highest plane, there's no like actual necessity for anything like on a physical level or on in terms of utility. It's like, we have to work so we can make money to have shelter and food, right? But for people who already have everything, they're exploring finer things in life, right? So what is the highest thing within reality? We will say it is love. So Krishna's whole existence is based around love and loving exchanges. And so everything that happens in his world or his lila, it is to promote greater variety, greater depth and profundity of loving exchange. And so for the purpose of that, Radha, Krishna, sometimes they're appearing as one in the form of Lord Chaitanya, Chaitanya Dev, and sometimes they're appearing as two. as Radha and Krishna, like in a cyclic way, for the purpose of their Leela, their divine play. They're appearing in these different ways. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense to me with because I have a bit of an understanding in like a completely different philosophy of like yin yang.
Sure. Yeah. Yin yang. Sure. Yeah. It's that same idea, but in a what we would say is more of a refined understanding, more developed understanding. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I mean, nowadays, especially, you could say probably in California, like goddess worship is becoming, you know, very popular. And you know, we're all about goddess worship too, but we actually consider that worship to be something kind of like on another level. So we don't, it's not something we don't talk about Radharani so much. We kind of reserve that as something on a higher shelf, you know, for when you're ready for that.
Brahmins would do that or something.
Well, that's another context. That's another thing. That's more of a social thing. Yeah, Brahmins. Yeah, I'm speaking in terms of spiritual advancement, spiritual truth, and evolution. Because our only reference point for everything that we hear is this mundane world, right? So if we go too much into the relationship between Radha and Krishna, it's very easy to bring it down to our experience of what male and female relationships are in this world. You know, also my feeling is that the female form is particularly vulnerable and subject to objectification. So there's a kind of like protection there, like we don't enter into that too much. So Krishna's kind of like our first point of understanding. But actually we're more focused on Lord Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya, he's particularly known for his magnanimity, his generosity. He's kind of like the entry point.
I see.
Like he particularly comes to this world for the purpose of helping people like us. You know, whereas Krishna is having a good time in his abode with all of his amazing friends and companions and lovers and parents, etc. Whereas Lord Chaitanya Dev, and one way you could say it is that Krishna, when he's under the influence of his feminine potency, he's imbued with this desire to distribute. So he particularly...
Could you say that again?
One way it can be understood is that when Krishna is enriched with his feminine potency, he's under the influence of his feminine potency, then he's imbued with this desire to distribute. He wants to give. That's her nature, actually. She wants to give Krishna to others. So when Krishna is under the influence of her mood, Radha Bhava Duti Sivolitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam, Krishna enhanced by the bhav and kanti, the heart, the mood, and her divine effulgence, golden effulgence, when he's under the influence of that, then he appears as Lord Chaitanya Dev with this desire to run after the people of this world and to help them and to connect them with Krishna. So yeah, I think I lost my main thought there, but I hope I answered whatever you said.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Anything else from anyone?
Just a side note about how this place is considered Gupta Govardhan.
Do you want to explain that?
No, I want to hear from you.
Well, the word Gupta means hidden. And our Gurudev, when he came, because we have this hill here also, so our Gurudev, like, he saw Govardhan here, and so he described this ashram environment as Gupta Govardhan, a hidden manifestation with Govardhan, with his divine vision. Like he can say that, he can see that, you know. So yeah.
So this is like their garden, and they're being worshipped in this little like cave cove, trees everywhere. And how everything in this temple is really like transcendental, like the bugs, the spider that greeted Vinodini when she walked into the door, into the prasadam hall, the deer, the bunnies, and they've all been, you know, our guru has walked here on this land, so everything's like, you know, electrified, or I don't know, just like touched by his potency.
Okay, I do have a pretty big question. So, what makes somebody a guru?
What makes somebody a guru? There are two main qualifications in the scriptures that are described. There's one famous verse in Bhagavad Gita in particular. What's the first word?
Yeah, I don't know that one.
What's the first word? Tad vidi pranipatena. Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashtena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. So this is a very helpful verse which describes in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, which describes both the qualities of the authentic seeker or disciple, as well as the authentic guru. And so there are three qualifications mentioned for the authentic disciple. Pranipatena means a mood of surrender. Like, I'm ready to set aside my own filters that I'm projecting on the environment. I'm ready to give up my self-seeking tendency within the world. I'm ready to give up my prospects for whatever it may be in the world, you know, fame, power, money, etc., whatever. We're setting those aside, and I want to connect with what's descending from a higher plane of thought, a higher plane of realization. I want to adjust myself to a higher vibration, you could say, you know, a higher plane. I don't just want to exist within the plane that I'm in at present, according to my own particular ideas, prejudices, attachments, but I want to move towards, I want to align myself with a higher understanding and vision of what the environment is and what my real purpose is. So, surrender. Pariprashtena means like a mood of sincere inquiry. And sevaya means the desire to serve. Because as we were mentioning earlier, what distinguishes this from so many other paths is that we don't want to make divinity an object of our own provincial desires, but we want to become an object of that higher plane. In other words, I don't want to use divinity for my purposes, but I want to be used for the purposes of divinity. You know, like one way our guru would frame this is like, it's like getting a visa. Like when you're going to like when you went to India, you have to get a visa, right? Having a passport is not enough. A visa means that you have demonstrated that you are going to that country in the interest of that country, right? When you make that application, you need to prove that you're going to support the economy, support the society in some way. You're not going there to colonize and to exploit, make trouble and for your own purposes, but you're going to support them and their whole system there. So it's the same thing. This is what the mood of service means. It's like, I'm approaching this higher plane to support and serve that higher ideology and system and way of being. So that mood of service is very dedication is very fundamental to our practice. So those are the 3 qualifications described for the bona fide seeker. And then for the guru, 2, Jnaninas and Tattvadarshina means, Jnaninas means that they have some knowledge of the scripture. They have a clear understanding of what this practice is, what the goal is, what we need to do to get there. They have some depth of understanding there. And then Tattvadarshina means that not only do they have that theoretical knowledge, but they're also having like a living connection with that higher plane. The word darshan, you know, they're having Tattvadarshina, it's the same word. They're having darshan of that higher, having vision of that higher plane. And there may be a spectrum of that. It may be that they're having, like in the case of someone like our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, like he's someone who we consider actually descended from that higher world, was a fully enlightened being, and could have, you know, for example, direct dialogue with the deities here, you know. Like someone of that level, or maybe someone in a more humble way who has like an authentic, you know, connection, like heart connection with that current of spiritual truth. So in other words, it's not just something theoretical, it's not just about book knowledge, but they have a real, authentic connection with divinity. Those are the 2 principal qualifications that are met. There are other verses mentioning some other points, but those 2 are consistent. Those are the main ones, most important, that are mentioned. Yeah.
I have one other question unless someone else does. So what, I'm curious what like sort of a description of an enlightened person is, or like what that means.
Well, there are different ways in which enlightenment may be defined, right? And sometimes we use that word with more of a broader connotation. But I mean, if you're asking what does it mean like to us, you know, then I would say, I mean, in a general sense, I would say an enlightened person is anyone who's trying to move towards a spiritual ideal. In a very broad and general sense, I would say that's an enlightened person. Next level, I would say someone who's fully detached from the material energy, material attachment, desires, and they're living in a spiritual consciousness. That's next level. And then beyond that, higher level, I would say, like according to our ideology, our conception, someone who is living in full Krishna consciousness. Iha yasya harir dasya. What is that verse? Iha yasya harir dasya manasa gira nikilashapya. It's a very nice verse. But saying like every thought, word, and deed is dedicated, you know, as an offering to Krishna. Not just that you're detached from the lower energy or you're living in this kind of general state of spiritual consciousness, but this mood of dedication, being fully absorbed in devotion. Premanjana Chita Bhakti Vilochanena Yam Shama Sundarama Chinchakalusa. This is another verse saying that these types of enlightened souls, their eyes are covered by this balm of prema, love. And through that, through the eyes of love, they see the beautiful form of Shama Sundar Krishna everywhere. You know, and everything that they do, every breath that they take is an offering. You know, there's nothing that they do, eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, there's nothing they do that is separate from that consciousness of offering. You know, love and offering, giving, you know, to all, primarily to that central, you know, lordship, deity, Shri Radha, Krishna, Guru, Garanga, all these things, and extending outwards to all who are connected with that divine center. That is an enlightened being, and I've only met one in my life, I can say.
And who was he?
Well, unfortunately, he's not physically with us anymore. Srila Govinda Maharaj, our Gurudev.
His photo.
Yeah, here's his photo here.
He's also over here in the left corner too.
Yeah, I mean, it was so profound to have that kind of experience, because it really was like every word, every breath, every movement, you know. Even, you know, if he didn't say anything, just to be in his presence was so profound.
He'd like work you, and you could sometimes feel like stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, very, very powerful. Very powerful. And nothing he did was ever tinged with any type of selfishness of any kind at all.
Recently I heard that like enlightenment can be like almost like a
Go ahead. Oh, we're just honoring, because he's making the dinner offering. So we're just like giving our...
I heard that enlightenment can be like a temporary thing. Yeah, I forget the name that it was called, but it's like that state, but it's not necessarily like a point that you arrive and stay at, or it can be, but sorry.
Like nirvana?
It wasn't nirvana. I can't remember what that other.
Mukti?
Anyway, I mean, there are many terms, you know,
yeah,
but I
so-
understand the general idea,
So
Sure.
I wondered if like in your belief here is if like that, I mean, I don't think that's even like really a focus, but is that something that like you believe, or the scripture says can be like maintained, or is it like more of like a phase or something?
What is that line? My God, man, like, oh, I can't remember so many things nowadays, these verses. Okay, this is how I can say it. There is a point of no return. But before you get there, yes, you can come back, to put it very simply, you know. So there is like a level of, let's say, a level of enlightenment when you're not in a totally secure position, when you can fall back. That is possible, sure. Yeah, I mean, if we're speaking broadly, like outside of our particular line of progress, then without bhakti, from our consideration, without bhakti, without entrance to the higher side, without a visa, we can compare a passport to general enlightenment, in the sense of realizing you're a spiritual being and being detached from the lower energy. That's a level of enlightenment, and we can compare that to getting a passport. But unless you get a visa to the higher side, the positive side, in the mode of bhakti, you're not in a permanent position. Why? Because the soul by nature is active and dynamic. So this kind of like, this state of like just being free from the negative side, absorbed in this general spiritual consciousness, is not enough. One needs to be connected in a loving relationship with God. That's the only thing that will really satisfy us. So for example, you know, systems like Buddhism and and there are parallels to Buddhism within the Vedic arena. You know, Mayavad. You might have heard of Shankaracharya lineages. They're like, you know, they correlate more or less with Buddhism. So they are more focused on you know, reaching this state of enlightenment where you're free from the material pull,
Right.
but they don't believe in the existence of a spiritual dynamic reality.
I say it's more like an internal, like something that goes on in your head or something.
Yeah, or living in this state of kind of like oneness, spiritual consciousness,
Right.
And yeah, relishing this bliss within the self, these kinds of things. But there's no connection with the higher deity. There's no relationship, no exchange of love with higher beings. And that's actually what our soul needs and craves for. So we won't be satisfied until we get that. So until you get that, yeah, you can have this state of, you can achieve this state of what we call moksha, general enlightenment, let's say. You can achieve that for ages of millions of years. You can be in that state, but it's not permanent. You know, eventually, unless you can catch that higher current to the higher positive dynamic spiritual world, you're not in a safe position, and eventually you'll have to come back. And it's mentioned that those souls, they take on forms like trees and stones, mountains, you know, like existing for this long period of time in this world before they move again into the whole, you know, cycle of species of life, you know. So yes. And then also within our own, like within the practice of bhakti, one can also reach a very high stage. But then for different reasons, they may, if they don't reach like that point of no return, they may fall down again, you know, into material attachment. But we consider that only to be a temporary thing, you know. Once someone has had some attraction to that higher world, one has developed some degree of real taste and love in their heart, it doesn't leave them. It may be covered over for some time, but it won't leave them completely. So yes, that is always there until you reach that final point, you know. Once you reach that final point, then there's no coming back. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Nice questions, huh?
Does this visa work during COVID?
What should we do then? Should we finish there? Yeah, maybe a kirtan from Vaidehi. You have low battery.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
I
wait.
see something
Yeah,
there.
you're right.
There's
Okay.
something there from Lakshmi Priya.
So, yes, those of you that are online, we're going to see if there's any questions, and we see one from Lakshmi Priya, although it won't
Is
let
that
me.
Lakshmi Priya in Guadalajara?
No, yes.
Even if we work all day.
By reading books, listening to classes, singing bhajans. It won't let me click on them.
Yes, it's possible.
Oh, okay. Vishakha Didi, can we be Krishna conscious even if we work all day by reading books, listening to classes, singing bhajans? I mean, is this bad? This is Lakshmi Priya's question.
Wait, what's the question?
Can we be Krishna conscious even if we work all day by reading books, listening to classes, singing bhajans, ... Is this bad? She's asking.
Do you understand the question?
Maybe ignore the "is this bad" part and say, can we be Krishna conscious even if we're engaged in like fruitive activity all day, simply by associating with, you know, reading the books and singing the bhajans and...
You know the answer to that, Lakshmi Priya. Come on. It's, you know, it's Krishna consciousness, right? We don't necessarily need to change our physical environment. We're trying to adjust our consciousness. So we can be anywhere, but internally connecting with this higher thing. You know, we can be in any environment with any kind of persons, but we don't have to be investing our faith in them. Association connection takes place on the conscious plane, not on the physical plane. So, and actually being in that type of environment, it can actually enhance our inner cultivation, you know, because that contrast that can support, can intensify our inner cultivation. And yeah, and that should be supported by what you've described, you know, first thing in the morning, like do something to support your spiritual culture, reading or chanting or hearing. Last thing before you go to bed, do something to support that also. That will set your day. If you start, Gurudev spoke about that, like if you set your day like that, it will change your whole day, you know? So, yeah, that's my answer. And yeah, just keep in mind that, you know, association, it's something that you can choose, you know. You can be in an environment where people are not good association, perhaps, but you can internally remove yourself from that. Maybe you have to go through some pleasantries and politeness and formalities, but if you don't think that they're supporting your inner growth, internally you can remove yourself from them. Of course, this is all much easier said than done. But, you know, we can but try, right? And we just have to go that extra mile to support that in our free time. You know, get the right association when we can in our free time, in the form of other practitioners, in the form of the books and tapes. Is that okay?
And she said that instead of meaning, is this bad, she was asking, is this enough?
Oh, enough, okay. Is this enough? I mean, we have such beautiful examples on our mission, right? There in Mexico, here in California, you know. I mean, Vaidehi's a nice example. She's, you know, she's working, but she's including her faith in her work and, you know, bringing people, and she's maintaining the fire. So, you know, we see it's possible. You know, we see that. Look at someone like Kumkum in San Jose. You know, she's running the ashram. Now she's retired, but for many years, you know, she was working full time and also taking care of the ashram, and Jivana Didi. I mean, there's so many beautiful, Yudamanyu Prabhu, so many beautiful, Jai Ram Prabhu. We have so many examples of devotees like that, you know. They're like out there in the corporate world, you know, like that's heavy, heavy energy, man. And they're maintaining that fire in their hearts. So we see it's possible. You know, we have nice examples of that. And it's also nice that we have devotees who are out there, like, you know, giving some nice presentation of some dignified presentation, you know, of who we are. So, you know, that's also a type of preaching, actually, like in your job, you know, just being like a decent, nice person, you know, and not hiding who you are. People know you're a devotee, and they're impressed. Like, oh, I thought these Hare Krishnas, they were all like bums or something, but or they're cult members. But I see they're actually normal people, and they're nice, and they're friendly, and, you know. So it's also a type of preaching, you know. I have this one, I worked in a bookstore for a while when I was a teenager, and one of our bosses, wonderful lady, and she follows me now on Facebook, and nice. And she's vegetarian. She's been vegetarian for years and years. Like she's a normal British lady, you know, but like a pious woman, and she's not really religious at all, but she's just a pious, nice person, and she's like, this is like 15 years later, and she's like, we connected recently on Facebook, and she often like she likes the things I post. I'm like, whoa, like you watched that, or you read, like this is like some hardcore stuff, you know, and you know, but because she knew me and she liked me, and then she's interested in what I'm doing, you know. So just being, you know, like a good example to the people, like you know, there's this wonderful quote, I can't remember who it's by, but it's something like, always preach the message of God. Use words if necessary. Like this is something that should be pervading just our like average behavior, like how we say hello to people, you know, like good morning, can I help you out with, can I open the door for you? Like, just these simple things. I've had experiences like that. You do some tiny little thing for someone, and years later they tell you, oh, I remember that time. And like, oh, I was just like being normal, you know, like, but these little things, they can have a big impact. They can make a very strong impression on, just like through being kind, you know. There's actually so much harshness in this world that sadly, often people are surprised if you're just nice, you know? It's a sad truth. So just by trying to be a nice person in your work, and also being open about who you are in your faith, you know, and that's also like a way of kind of strengthening your faith, you know, like you're kind of making this space around you, like establishing this is who I am, and asking the people who know you to support you in that, you know. And if you have decent co-workers or friends out there, then they'll be happy to honor that and support that. As long as you're not like in China or anything like that, you know, right? then you might get in trouble. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope that's helpful, actually, Priya. And happy to have you with us. She's a dear sister, actually, Priya. She's, you know, always, she's had some hard times. She's from Venezuela, you know. Always some hard times, but your faith is always strong, we see.
So just a little, I always like to do this. So we have Marco Bruno watching, Murari, right? Murari Krishna.
Oh, is he the one who's here this morning?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I
He's
didn't get a
always
chance
on
to
Facebook.
talk to
Yeah,
him. He was very nice,
Yeah.
from Brazil.
Yes, our
Oh,
dear
cool.
friend, he's watching.
Relax.
And Bud Fish. I guess he's a friend of mine, but I don't know what your non-Facebook Bud Fish name is. And then we have Madhav watching as well. And we have Bimala watching, sending her dandavats.
I
Fab.
didn't see her today. My day was low.
Oh, Varun misses you, Bimala. He says his day was low because he didn't get to see you. Fabiola is watching. Paulina, and she says she's been waiting and expecting for this transmission all day. And Rajbhuwan Yadav, I cannot remember your non-Facebook name, but Dandavat Pranams, please continue reminding me and then we'll memorize it. Hare Krishna, Dandavat, and who else is here? Jagadananda Prabhu is watching.
Jai Jagadananda Prabhu.
And then Gaur N. Das. I'm not sure if that's...
Oh, Gaur Narayan in Mexico.
Okay, Gaur
We
Narayan.
have two Gaur Narayans in Mexico. I think I know it. The one in Morelia, I think. Dandavat. Dandavat, dear brother. Mi hermano.
And Krishna Surya Das.
Dandavat.
Rasangi Didi.
Dandavat. Rasangi Didi.
Madhu Gopal Das.
In Tijuana, maybe.
I think so, yes.
Oh, and that looks like, that's Lakshmi Priya's mother. I forgot her name now. What's her name? Lakshmi Priya's mother. Tarmoy. Tarmoy
yes.
Didi. Dandavat.
Tarmoy Didi. Sanchez Roberta.
Dandavat. I know, I've forgotten her devotional name, but I know her.
Hari Garcia. That's Hari Balaba, no? No.
No.
Hari Garcia. Hari Garcia, Dandavat.
Dandavat.
And
Lakshmi Priya.
And Bud Fish is saying he misses his family at the Seva Ashram.
You're welcome, always. The door's open.
And Guru Pada Bishwas.
Dandavat.
Someone named Cloud Revered. We don't know your
Okay,
name, but
that's
hello,
a new one.
Dandavats. And
Revered cloud.
Saravanam Gavaria.
Okay, he's in Malaysia, I think.
I
forget his devotional name. Dandavat.
Dandavat. And
Madhu
Mangal.
What does he say?
He says, preach the gospel always when necessary. Use words.
Thank you, Saint Francis.
Yeah? Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
preach the gospel always when necessary. Use words. Thank you, very nice. He's very good at locating these quotes.
He's the best. Madhu Mangal Prabhu, you're the best, really. Thank you. You're always just so present to all the classes. Okay, these are the devotees who are watching tonight online. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we will end with some kirtan. Thank you, Vishakha Devi.
My pleasure.
So much, thank you.
You've been really, really nice. And so many wonderful questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Would anybody like to sing? Hari
You
Haraya?
sing, Vaidehi. You sing.
You want me to sing?
We want you to sing.
Okay. Do you play Mridanga?
He does. Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Excuse me.
Very simply.
Page 60 in the right 60 in the Kirtan guide.
Oh yeah, very
Trying to get everyone. Oh. Okay.
Did you mention we have this exciting group from Salt Lake City?
Oh yes, those of you that are watching, we have some wonderful devotees visiting from Salt Lake City, Utah, and they were here for the weekend, and we'll be staying a few more days or another week.
Till the 1st of September.
Yay, so we're so lucky to have them here, and we have other friends visiting. Your name again?
Steve.
Steve and Jono and Varun. So we have, and Chinmoy's here, so we have many nice devotees from out of town coming to spend the weekend here. Okay.
And we have the kitchen crew too.
Oh yeah, kitchen crew.
Haribo!
Haribo!
Shambhunath, Ramsundar. Kitchen Pujari team.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha. 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 Jadavaya Madhavaya Krishna
Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Pavan Janarda Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Rakat Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki
Jai.
Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Sri Rupa Nuaguru Varga Ki
Jai.
Dhamacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Saparshad Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki
Jai.
Saparshad Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki
Jai.
Shuddha Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Sri Nrsimhadev Ki
Jai.
Bhakta Prabhar Sri Prahlad Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Sri Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki
Jai.
Vrindavan Purushottam Dham Ki
Jai.
Sri Navadvip Dham Ki
Jai.
Sri Mayapur Dham Ki
Jai.
Sri Ganga Jamuna Ji Ki
Jai.
Sri Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Tulsi Devi Ki
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Nirmala Acharya Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Sri Yukta Vishakha Didi Ki
Jai.
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Acharya Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki
Jai.
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Soquel Seva Ashram Ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaud Premanande
Hari
Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Vaidehi Devi Dasi.
Jai.
Chinmoy Prabhu Ki
Jai. Vaidehi Ki Jai.
Nanda Ki Jai. Everybody Ki
Jai.
Kalindi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Okay, thank you all so much for joining. We will see you again later this week, Thursday, 8 p.m. We will go live again. Vishakha will be continuing on her travels. So you will be able to see her live from Austin, Texas, and the devotees will be joining her through the rest of the tour. And we will also continue going live here. This Friday, we have Kirtan again at Pleasure Point Yoga. So if you are local in Santa Cruz, please join us. We will be chanting and practicing Maha Mantra at Pleasure Point Yoga Friday at, I think it's 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Feel free to come visit us and join through the RTs throughout the day. 5:30 a.m. if you feel like waking up that early and coming for the morning program. 12:30 noon, and then 6:30 p.m. All are welcome. And see you all later this week. Dandavat Pranams. Hare Krishna. Bye, Madhumanga Prabhu.